Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes for another night of story time. And tonight we bring you chapter 27 in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Let us begin. Mina Harker's journal, November 1st. All day long we have traveled, and at a good speed. The horses seem to know that they are being kindly treated, for they go willingly their full stage at best speed. We have now had so many changes and find the same thing so constantly that we are encouraged to think that the journey will be an easy one. Dr. Van Helsing is laconic. He tells the farmers that he is hurrying to Bistoritz and pays them well to make exchange of horses. We get hot soup or coffee or tea, and off we go. It is a lovely country, full of beauties of all imaginable kinds, and the people are brave and strong and simple, and seem full of nice qualities. They are very, very superstitious. In the first house where we stopped, when the woman who served us saw the scar on my forehead, she crossed herself and put out 2 fingers towards me to keep off the evil eye. I believe they were in the trouble of putting an extra amount of garlic into our food, and I can't abide garlic. Ever since then, I have taken care not to take off my hat or veil, and so have escaped their suspicions. We are traveling fast, and as we have no driver with us to carry tales, we go ahead of scandal. But I dare say that I fear the evil eye will follow hard behind us all the way. The professor seems tireless. All day he would not take any rest, though he made me sleep for a long spell. At sunset time he hypnotized me, and he says that I answered as usual, darkness lapping the water and creaking wood, so our enemy is still on the river. I am afraid to think of Jonathan, but somehow I have no fear for him or for myself. I write this whilst we wait in a farmhouse for the horses to be ready. Dr. Van Helsing is sleeping, poor dear. He looks very tired and old and gray, but his mouth is set firmly as to a conqueror's. Even in his sleep, he is an instinct of resolution. When we have well started, I must make him rest whilst I drive. I shall tell him that we have days before us, and we must not break down when most of all his strength will be needed. All is ready. We are off shortly. Morning of November 2nd. I was successful and we took turns driving all night. Now the day is on us. Bright, though cold, there is a strange heaviness in the air. I say heaviness, for I want a better word. I mean that it oppresses us both. It's very cold, and only our warm furs keep us comfortable. At dawn, Van Helsing hypnotized me. He says I answered darkness, creaking wood, and roaring water. So the river is changing as they ascend. I do hope that my darling will not run any chance of danger, more than need be. But we are in God's hands. November 2nd, night. All day long driving. The country gets wilder as we go, and the great spurs of the Carpathians, with which Veresti seemed so far from us, are so low on the horizon. Now they seem to gather round us and tower in front. We both seem in good spirits. I think we make an effort each to cheer each other. In doing so, we cheer ourselves. So Dr. Van Helsing says that by morning we shall reach Borgo Pass. The houses are very few here now, and the professor says that the last horse we got will have to go on with us, as we may not be able to change. He got 2 in addition to the 2 we changed, so that we may now have a route of 4 in hand. The dear horses are patient and good, and they give us no trouble. We are not worried with the other travelers, and so even I can drive. We shall get to the pass in daylight. We do not want to arrive before. So we take it easy, and we each have a long rest in turn. Oh, what will tomorrow bring to us? We go to seek the place where my poor darling suffered so much. God grant that we may be guided aright, and that he will design to watch over my husband and those dear to us both, and who are in such deadly peril. As for me, I am not worthy in his sight. Alas, I am unclean to his eyes, and I shall be until he may design to let me stand forth in his sight as one of those who have not incurred his wrath. Memorandum by Abraham Van Helsing, November 4th. This to my old and true friend John Seward, M.D. of Purefleet, London, in case I might not see him again. It may explain. It is morning, and I write by a fire which all the night I have kept alive, Madam Mina aiding me. It is cold, cold, so cold that the gray heavy sky is full of snow, which, when it falls, will settle for all winter, as the ground is hardening to receive it. It seems to have affected Madam Mina. She has been so heavy of head all day that she was not like herself. She sleeps and sleeps and sleeps. She, who is usually so alert, has done literally nothing all day. She even has lost her appetite. She makes no entry into her little diary. She who writes so faithful at every pause. Something whispers to me that all is not well. However, tonight she is more vif. Her long sleep all day have refreshed and restored her, for now she is all sweet and bright as ever. At sunset I will try to hypnotize her, but alas, with no effect. The power has grown less and less with each day, and tonight it will fail me altogether. Well, God's will be done, whatever it may be, and whithersoever it may lead. Now to the historical. As for Madam Mina, write not in her stenography. I must, in my cumbrous old fashion, that so each day of us may not go unrecorded. We got to the Borgo Pass just after sunrise yesterday morning. When I saw the signs of the dawn, I got ready for the hypnotism. We stopped our carriage and got down so that there might be no disturbance. I made a couch with furs, and Madam Mina, lying down, yielded herself as usual, but more slow and more short time than ever, and to the hypnotic sleep with less ease. As before came the answer, darkness and the swirling of water. Then she awoke, bright and radiant, and we got on our way and soon reached the pass. At this time and place, she became all on fire with zeal, some new guiding power being her manifested. For she pointed to a road and said, "This is the way." "How know you it?" I asked. "Of course I know it," she answered, and with a pause added, "Have not my Jonathan traveled it and wrote of this travel?" At first I thought maybe this was just something somewhat strange, but soon I saw that there was only one such byroad, and it used but little and very different from the coach road from the Bukovina to the Bistaritz, which is more wide and hard and has seen more use. So we came down this road when we met others. Not always were we sure that there were roads at all ahead for us, for they were neglected and light snow had fallen upon them. The horses know that they only have one way to go. I give rein to them and they go on so patiently. By and by we find things which Jonathan have noted in his wonderful diary that he left for us. Then we went on for long, long hours and hours and hours. At the first I told Miss Mina to sleep. She tried and she succeeded. She slept all the time till at the last. I feel myself to be suspiciously growing more and more wondering and wondering more, and attempt to wake her. But she slept on, and I may not wake her, though I try. I do not wish to try too hard, lest to harm her, for I know that she has suffered much, and sleep at times be all in order to her. I think I drowse myself, for all of a sudden I feel guilt, as though I have done something. I find myself bolt up with the reins in my hand, and the good horses go along, jog, 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 just as ever. I look down and I find Madam Mina still asleep. It is now not far off sunset time, and over the snow the light of the sun flows in a big yellow flood, so that we throw great long shadows on where the mountain rises up so steeply. For we are now going up, and all is, oh, so wild and rocky, as though it were the end of the world. Then I arose Madam Mina. This time she awakened with not too much trouble, and then I tried to put her into a hypnotic sleep. But she slept not, being as though I were not. Still I tried and tried, till all at once I found her and myself in the dark. So I looked around and found the sun had gone down. Madam Mina laughed, and I turned and looked at her. She is now quite awake, and looking so well as I have never seen her since that night at Carfax when we first entered the Count's house. I am amazed and not at ease, but she is so bright and tender and thoughtful for me that I forgot all fears. I lit a fire, for we have brought supply of wood with us, and she prepared food while I undid the horses and set them free, tethered in shelter to feed. Then, when I returned to the fire, she made supper ready. I went to help her, but she smiled and told me that I should leave her be and eat, and that she was so hungry that she would not wait either. I didn't like that, but I had grave doubts, but I feared to frighten her, and so I am silent of it. She helped me, and I ate alone, and then we wrapped our furs and lay beside the fire, and I told her to sleep a while I watched. But presently I forgot all of watching, and when I suddenly remembered to watch, and that I was supposed to be on watch, I found her lying quiet, but awake, and looking at me with very bright eyes. Once or twice more the same occurred, and I got much sleep till before morning. When I awoke, I tried to hypnotize her, but alas, though she shut her eyes obediently, she could not sleep. The sun rose up and up and up and up, and then sleep came to her too late, but so heavy that she will not wake. I have lifted her up and placed her sleeping in the carriage. When I have harnessed the horses and made all ready, Madam was still asleep, and she looked in her sleep more healthy and redder than before, and I did not like that. Something seemed off, and I am very afraid of all things, even to think, but I must go on in my way. The stake we play for is life and death, or more than these, and we must not flinch. November 5th, morning. Let me be more accurate in everything, for though you and I have seen some strange things together, you may at first think that I, Van Helsing, am mad, and that the many hours and the so long strain on nerves has, at the last turn, turned my brain in some odd way. All yesterday we traveled, ever getting closer to the mountains and moving into a more and more wild and deserted land. There are great frowning precipices and much falling water, and nature seems to have held some time her carnival. Madam Mina still sleeps, and though I did have hunger and appeased it, I could not wake her even for food. I began to fear that the fatal spell of the place was upon her, tainted as she is with that vampire baptism. Well, said I to myself, if it be that she sleep all day, it shall also be that I do not sleep at all tonight. As we traveled on through the rough road, the road of an ancient and imperfect kind, I held down my head and slept. Again I awoke with a sense of guilt and of time passing, and found Madam Mina still asleep, and the sun low and down. But all was indeed changed. The frowning mountains seemed further away, and we were near the top of the steep rising hill, on summit of which was such a castle as Jonathan told in his diary. At once I exulted in fear, and now, for good or ill, the end was near. I woke Madamina and again tried to hypnotize her, but alas, unraveling too late. Then, ere the great dark came upon us, for even after downed sun, the heavens reflected the gone sun on the snow, and all was for a time in a great twilight. I took out the horses and fed them in what shelter I could. Then I made a fire, and near it I made for Madamina just whatever I could. Now awake, more charming than ever, and sitting comfortably amid her rugs, I got ready for food, but she would not eat, simply saying that she had not hunger. She was not hungry at all, no matter how much I implored her to eat. I did not press her, knowing her unavailings, so I let it go. But I myself ate, for I must, as needs now, I must be strong, and everything I need is for my strength to be at its most highest, greatest ability. Then, with the fear on me of what might be, I drew a ring so big for her comfort round where Madam Mina sat, and over the ring I passed some of the wafer and broke it in fine pieces, so that all was well guarded. She sat still all the time, so still as one who is dead, and she grew whiter and ever whiter till the snow was not more pale than she, and no word was said by her. But when I drew near, she clung to me, and I could and did know that the poor soul shook her from head to feet with a tremor that was painful to feel. I said to her presently, when she had grown more quiet, "Will you not come over to the fire with me? For I wish to make a test of what she could do and not do." She rose obediently, but when she made a step forward, she stopped and stood as one who would be stricken. "Why not go on?" I asked. She shook her head, and coming back, sat down in her same place. Then, looking to me with open eyes, as of one awakened from sleep, she simply said, "I cannot," and remained silent. I rejoiced, for I knew what she could not do. None of those that we dreaded could. Though there might be danger to her body, yet her soul was safe. Presently the horses began to scream and tore at their tethers, till I came to them and quieted them. When they did feel my hands on them, they whinnied low as in joy, and licked my hands, and were quiet for a time. Many times through the night did I come to them, till it arrived the cold hour when all nature is at its lowest, and every time my coming was the quiet of them, and to quiet them. In the cold hour the fire began to die, and I was about stepping forth to replenish it, for now the snow came in flying sweeps, and with it a chilled mist. Even in the dark there was a light of some kind, as there ever is over snow, and it seemed as though the snow flurries and the wreaths of the mist took shape as of the women with trailing garments. All was in dead grim silence, only that the horses whinnied and cowered as if in terror of the worst. I began to fear horrible fears, but then it came to me, that sense of safety in the ring wherein I stood. I began to think that my imaginings were of the night and the gloom and the unrest that I have gone through, and all the terrible anxiety. It was as though my memories of all of Jonathan's horrid experiences were befooling me, for the snowflakes and the mist began to wheel and circle around till all I could get as though a shadowy glimpse of those women that would have kissed him. And then the horses cowered lower and lower and moaned in terror as men do in pain. Even the madness of fright was not to them unknown, so they could break away. I feared for my dear Madamina when these weird figures drew near and circled round us. I looked at her, and she sat calm and smiled at me. When I would have stepped to the fire to replenish it, she caught me and held me back, and whispered like a voice that one hears in a dream, so low it was. And it said, "No, no, do not go without. Here you are safe." I turned to her, and looking in her eyes, said, "But you, it is for you that I fear." Whereat she laughed a laugh, low and unreal, and said, "Fear me, fear for me. Why fear for me? None safer in the world from them than I." And as I wondered at the meaning of her words, a puff of wind made the flame leap up, and see the red scar on her forehead. Then, alas, I knew, did I not? I would soon have learned, for the wheeling figures of the mist and the snow came closer, but keeping ever without the holy circle. Then they began to materialize, till, if God have not taken away my reason, for I saw it through my own eyes, there were before me in actual flesh the same three women that Jonathan saw in that room in the castle, when they would have kissed his throat. I knew the swaying round the forms, and the bright hard eyes, and the white teeth, and the ruddy color, the voluptuous lips. They smiled ever at poor Madamina. And as their laugh came through the silence of the night, they twined their arms and pointed to her, and said in those sweet tingling notes that Jonathan said were of the intolerable sweetness of the water glasses, "Come, sister, come to us. Come, come." In fear I turned to my poor Madamina, and my heart with gladness leapt like flame. For oh, the terror in her sweet eyes, the repulsion, the horror, told a story to my heart that was all of hope. God be thanked, she was not yet one of them. I seized some of the firewood which was by me, and holding out some of the wafer, advanced on them towards the fire. They drew back before me, and laughed their low, horrid laugh. I fed the fire and feared them not, for I knew that we were safe within our protections. They could not approach me whilst I was armed, nor Madamina whilst she remained within the ring, which she could not leave, no more than they could enter. The horses had ceased to moan, and lay still on the ground. The snow fell on them softly, and they grew whiter. I knew that there was for the poor beasts no more of terror. And so we remained till the red of the dawn to fall through the snow gloom. I was desolate and afraid, and full of woe and terror, but when the beautiful sun began to climb the horizon, life was to me again. At the first coming of the dawn, the horrid figures melted in the whirling mists of snow. The wreaths of transparent gloom moved away towards the castle and were lost. Instinctively, with the dawn coming, I turned to Madamina, intending to hypnotize her, but she lay in a deep and sudden sleep from which I could not wake her. I tried to hypnotize her through her sleep, but she made no response, none at all, and the day broke. I fear yet to stir. I have made my fire and have seen the horses. They are all dead. Today I have much to do, and I keep waiting till the sun is up high, for there may be places where I must go, where that sunlight, though snow and midst obscure it, will be to me a safety. I will strengthen me with breakfast, and then I will, to my terrible work, begin. Madam Mina still sleeps, and, God be thanked, she is calm in her sleep. Jonathan Harker's Journal, November 4th, evening. The accident to the launch has been a terrible thing for us. Only for it, we should have overtaken the boat long ago, and by now my dear Mina would have been free. I fear to think of her off in the world's woods near that horrid place. We have got horses, and we follow on the track. I noted this whilst Godalming was getting ready. We have our arms, and the Sagnavy must look out if they mean to fight. Oh, if only Morris and Seward were with us. We must only hope. If I write no more, goodbye, Mina. God bless and keep you. Dr. Seward's Diary, November 5th. With the dawn, we saw the body of Signy before us, a dashing away from the river. With their leader wagon, they surrounded it in a cluster and hurried along as though beset. The snow is falling lightly, and there is a strange excitement in the air. It may be our own feelings, but the desperation is strange. It's a kind of depression, actually. Far off, I hear the howling of wolves. The snow brings them down from the mountains, and there are dangers to all of us, and from all sides. The horses are nearly ready, and we are soon off. We ride to death of someone. God alone only knows who, or where, or what, or when, or how it may be. Dr. Van Helsing's Memorandum, November 5th, afternoon. I am at least sane, thank God, for that mercy at all events, though the proving it has been dreadful. When I left Madam Mina sleeping within the holy circle, I took my way to the castle. The blacksmith's hammer, which I took in the carriage from Vestry, was useful. Though the doors were all open, I broke them off by the rusty hinges, lest some ill intent or ill chance should close them, so that being entered, I might not get out. Jonathan's bitter experience served me here. By memory of his diary, I found my way to the old chapel, for I knew that here my work lay. The air was oppressive. It seemed as if there were some sulphurous fumes, which at times made me dizzy. Either there was a roaring in my ears, or I had heard afar of the howl of wolves. Then I bethought me of my dear Madam Mina, and I was in a terrible plight. The dilemma had me between his horns. Her I had not dared to take into this place, but left safe from the vampire in that holy circle, and yet even there would be the wolf. I resolve me that my work lay here, and that as the wolves we must be submitted to, if it were to happen, if it were God's will. At any rate, it was only death and freedom beyond. So did I choose for her. Had it been for myself, the choice had been easy. The maw of the wolf were better to rest in than the grave of the vampire. So I made my choice to go on with my work. I knew that there were at least 3 graves to find, graves that are inhabited. So I searched, and I found one of them. She lay in her vampire sleep, so full of life and voluptuous beauty that I shuddered as though I had come to a murder, and that I was to do the murder. Ah, I doubt that many in old time, when such things were, many a man who set forth to do such a task as mine, found at last his heart would fail him. And when then his nerve, so he delayed and delayed and delayed, till the mere beauty and the fascination of the wanton undead would have hypnotized him. And he remained on and on till sunset came, and the vampire's sleep was over. Then the beautiful eyes of the fair woman opened and looked like love, and the voluptuous mouth presented a need to kiss, and a man is weak. And there remains one more victim in the vampire fold, one more to swell the grim and grisly ranks of the undead. There is some fascination, surely, when I am moved by the mere presence of such as one as these. Even lying as she lay in a tomb, fretted with age and heavy with dust of centuries, though there be that horrid odor, such as the lairs of the Count had. Yes, I was moved, I, Van Helsing, with all my purpose and with my motive for hate. I was moved to a yearning for delay, which seemed to paralyze my faculties and to clog my very soul. It may have been that the need for a natural sleep has come, and that strange oppression of the air were beginning to overcome me. Certainly it was that I was lapsing into sleep, the open-eyed sleep of one who yields to a sweet fascination, when there came through the snow stilled air a long low wail, so full of woe and pity that it woke me like the sound of a clarion, for it was the voice of dear Madam Mina that I heard. Then I braced myself again to my horrid task, and found by wrenching away the tomb's tops one of the other sisters, the dark one, and I dared not pause to look at her as I had on her sister, lest once more I should begin to enthrall. But I go on searching until presently I found in a high great tomb, as if made to one much beloved, that the other fair sister, which, like Jonathan, I had seen to gather herself out of the atoms of the mist. She was so fair to look on, so radiantly beautiful, so exquisitely voluptuous, that the very instinct of man in me, which calls some of my sex to love and to protect one of hers, made my head whirl with new emotions. But God be thanked, that soul wail of my dear Madamina had not died out of my ears, and before the spell could be wrought further upon me, I had nerved myself to my wild work. By this time I had searched all the tombs in the chapel, so far as I could tell, and there had been only 3 of these undead phantoms around us in the night. I took it that there were no more of active undead in existence. There was one great tomb more, lordly than all the rest. Huge it was, and nobly proportioned. On it was but one word: Dracula. This, then, was the undead home of the king vampire, to whom so many more were due. Its emptiness spoke eloquently to make certain that I knew, before I began to restore these women to their dead selves. Through my artful work, I laid in Dracula's tomb some of the wafer, and so banished him from it, undead forever. Then began my terrible task, and I dreaded it. Had it been but one, it had been easy comparatively, but 3, to begin twice more after I had been through a deed of horror. For if it was ever terrible with these sweet Miss Lucy, what would it be with these strange ones who had survived through centuries, and who had been strengthened by the passing of the years, who would, if they could, have fought for their soul lives? Oh, my friend John, but it was butcher work. I had not been nerved by thoughts of other dead and of other living whom hung such a pall of fear. I could not have gone on. I tremble even yet, though till all work was over, God be thanked, my nerve did stand. Had I not seen the repose of the first place, and the gladness that stole over it just ere the final dissolution came, a realization that the soul had been won, I could not have gone further with my butchery. I could not have endured the horrid screeching as the stake drove home, and plunged of wreathing form, and lips of bloody foam. I should have fled in terror and left my work undone. But it is over, and the poor souls, I can pity them now and weep as I think of them placid, each in her full sleep of death, for a short moment ere fading. For friend John hardly had my knife severed the head of each before the whole body began to melt away and crumble into its native dust, as though the death that should have come centuries ago and gone had at last asserted itself and said at once and aloud, I am here, I am death, and you are now dead. Before I left the castle, I so fixed its entrances that nevermore can the count enter there undead. When I stepped into the circle where Madam Mina slept, she woke from her sleep, and seeing me, cried out in pain that I had endured too much. Come, she said, come away with this awful place. Let us go to meet my husband, who is, I know, coming towards us. She was looking thin and pale and weak, but her eyes were pure and glowed with fervor. I was glad to see her paleness and illness, for my mind was full of fresh horror of that ruddy vampire sleep. And so, with the trust and hope and yet full of fear, we go eastward to meet our friends and him whom Madam Mina tells me that she knows are coming to meet us. Mina Harker's Journal, November 6th. It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming. We did not go fast, though the way was steeply downhill, for we had to take heavy rugs and wraps with us. We dared not face the possibility of being left without warmth in the cold and the snow. We had to take some of our provisions, too, for we were in a perfect desolation, and so far as we could see through the snowfalls, there was not even the sign of habitation. When we had gone about a mile, I was tired with the heavy walking and sat down to rest. Then we looked back and saw where the clear line of Dracula's castle cut the sky, for we were so deep under the hill whereon it was set that the angle of the perspective of the Carpathian Mountains was far below it. We saw it and all its grandeur, perched 1,000 feet on the summit of a sheer precipice, and with seemingly a great gap between it and the steep of adjacent mountains on any side. There was something wild and uncanny about the place. We could hear the distant howling of wolves where they were far off, but the sound, even though coming muffled through the deadening snowfall, was full of terror. I knew from the way that Dr. Van Helsing was searching about that he was trying to seek some strategic point where we could be less exposed in case of attack. The rough roadway still led downwards. We could trace it through the drifted snows. In a little while, the professor signaled to me, so I got up and joined him. We had found a wonderful spot, a sort of natural hollow in a rock, with an entrance like a doorway between two boulders. He took me by the hand and drew me in and said, "See, here you will be in shelter, and if the wolves do come, I can meet them one by one." He brought in our furs and made a snug nest for me, and got out some provisions and forced them upon me, but I could not eat. To even try to do so was repulsive to me, and much as I would have liked to please him, I could not bring myself to the attempt. He looked very sad, but did not reproach me. Taking his field glasses from the case, he stood on top of the rock and suddenly began to search the horizons. Suddenly he called out, "Look, Madam Mina, look, look, look!" I sprang up and stood beside him on the rock. He handed me his glasses and pointed. The snow was now falling more heavily and swirled about fiercely, for a high wind was beginning to blow. However, there were times when there were pauses between the snow flurries, and I could see a long way around from the height where we were at. it is possible to see a great distance, and far off beyond the white waste of snow, I could see the river lying on a black ribbon in kinks and curls as it wound its way, straight in front of us and not far off. In fact, so near that I wondered we had not noticed before. Came a group of mounted men hurrying along. In the midst of them was a cart, a long leader wagon, which swept from side to side like a dog's tail wagging, with each stern inequality of the road outlined against the snow. As they were, I could see from the men's clothes that they were the peasants or gypsies of some kind. On the cart was a great square chest. My heart leaped as I saw it, for I felt that the end was coming. The evening was now drawing close, and well I knew that at sunset the thing which was till then imprisoned there would take new freedom, and could in any of the many forms elude all pursuit. In fear I turned to the professor. To my consternation, however, he was not there. An instant later I saw him below me. Round the rock he had drawn a circle, such that we found shelter in the night. When he had completed it, he stood beside me again, saying, "At least you shall be safe from him." He looked at the glasses from me, and he took them, and at the next lull of the snow swept the whole space below us. "See," he said, "they come quickly. They know they are flogging horses and galloping as hard as they can." He paused and went on in a hollow voice, "They are racing for sunset. We may be too late. God's will be done." Down came another binding rush of driving snow, and the whole landscape was blotted out. It soon passed, however, and once more his glasses were fixed on the plain. Then came a sudden cry. "Look! Look! Look! See, 2 horsemen follow fast, coming up from the south. It must be Quincy and John. Take the glass. Look before the snow blots it out." I took it and looked through it. The 2 men might be Dr. Seward and Mr. Morris. I knew at all events that neither of them was Jonathan. At the same time, I knew that Jonathan was not far off. Looking around, I saw that the north side of the coming party, 2 other men riding at breakneck speed. One of them I knew was Jonathan, and the other I took, of course, to be Lord Godalming. They too were pursuing the party with the cart. When I told the professor, he shouted in glee like a schoolboy, and after looking intently till a snowfall made sight impossible, he laid his Winchester rifle ready for use against the boulder at the opening of our shelter. "They are all converging," he said. "When the time comes, we shall have gypsies on all sides." I got out my revolver ready in hand, for whilst we were speaking, the howling of wolves came louder and louder. When the snowstorm abated a moment, we looked again. It was strange to see the snow falling in such heavy flakes close to us and beyond, the sun shining more and more brightly as it sank down towards the far mountain tops, sweeping the glass all around us. I could see here and there dots moving singly, and 2s and 3s and larger numbers, and the wolves were gathering for their prey. Every instant seemed an age whilst we waited. The wind came now in fierce bursts, and the snow was driven with fury as it swept upon us in circling eddies. At times we could not see an arm's length before us, but the others, as the hollow-sounding wind swept by us, it seemed to clear the airspace around us, so that we could see afar off. We had of late been so accustomed to watching for sunrise and sunset that we knew with fair accuracy when it would be, and we knew that before long the sun would set. It was hard to believe that by our watches it was less than an hour that we waited in the rocky shelter before the various bodies began to converge close upon us. The wind came now with fiercer and more bitter sweeps, and more steadily from the north. It seemingly had driven the snow clouds from us, for, with only occasional bursts, the snow fell. We could distinguish clearly the individuals of each party, and pursued and pursuers. Strangely enough, those pursued did not seem to realize, or at least to care, that they were being pursued. They seemed, however, to hasten with redoubled speed as the sun dropped lower and lower on the mountain tops. Closer and closer they drew, the professor and I, crouched down behind our rock and held our weapons ready. I could see that he was determined and that they should not pass, and we were quiet and quite unaware of our presence. All at once, two voices shouted out to "Halt! Halt!" One was my Jonathan's, raised in a high key of passion. The other, Mr. Morris' strong, resolute tone of a quiet command. The gypsies may not have known the language, but there was no mistaking the tone. In whatever tongue those words were spoken, instinctively they reined in. And at that instant, Lord Godalming and Jonathan dashed up at one side, and Dr. Seward and Mr. Morris on the other, the leader of their gypsies, a splendid-looking fellow who sat on his horse like a centaur, waved them back, and in a fierce voice gave to his companions some words to proceed. They lashed the horses and sprang forward, but the four men raised their Winchester rifles and in an unmistakable way commanded them to stop. At the same moment, Dr. Van Helsing and I rose behind the rock and pointed our weapons at them. Seeing that they were surrounded by the men, tightened their reins and drew up. The leader turned to them and gave a word, at which every man of the gypsy party drew what weapon he carried, knife or pistol, and held himself in readiness to attack. Issue was joined in an instant. The leader, with a quick movement of his rein, threw his horse out in front, and pointing first to the sun, now close down on the hill tops and then the castle, said something which I did not understand. For answer, all four men of our party threw themselves from their horses and dashed towards the cart. I should have felt a terrible fear at seeing Jonathan in such danger, but that the ardor of the battle must have been upon me as well as the rest of them. I felt no fear, but only a wild surging desire to do something. Seeing the quick movement of our parties, the leader of the gypsies gave command. His men instantly formed around the cart in a sort of undisciplined endeavor, which each of them shouldering and pushing the other in his eagerness to carry out the order. In the midst of this, I could see Jonathan on one side of the ring of men, Quincy on the other. They were forcing a way to the cart. It was evident that they were bent on finishing their task before the sun should set. Nothing to stop or even to hinder them. Neither the leveled weapons, nor the flashing knives of the gypsies in front, nor the howling of the wolves behind, appeared to even attract their attention. Jonathan's impetuosity and the manifest singleness of his purpose seemed to overweigh those in front of him instinctively. Instinctively, in fact, they cowered aside and let him pass. In an instant, he jumped upon the cart and with a strength which seemed incredible, raised the great box and flung it over the wheel to the ground. In the meantime, Mr. Morris had to use force to pass through the side of the ring at Zegny. All the time I had been breathlessly watching Jonathan. I had, with the tail of my eye, seen him pressing desperately forward, and in that had seen the knives of the gypsies flash as he won his way through them, and they cut at him. He had parried with his great bowie knife, and the first thought he had come through safety. But as he sprang beside Jonathan, who had by now jumped from the cart, I could see that with his left hand he was clutching at his side, and that blood was spurting through his fingers. He did not delay, notwithstanding this, for as Jonathan, with desperate energy, attacked one in the chest, attempting to pry off the lid with his great kukuri knife, he attacked the other frantically with his bowie knife. Under the efforts of both men, the lid began to yield, and the nails drew with quick screeching sound. The top of the box was thrown back. By the time the gypsies, seeing themselves covered with Winchesters, had, at the mercy of Lord Godalming and Dr. Seward, given in and made no more resistance, the sun was already down on the mountain tops, and the shadows of the whole group fell upon the snow. I saw the Count lying within the box upon the earth, some of which the rude falling from the cart had scattered over him. He was deathly pale, just like a waxen image, and the red eyes glared with a horrible vindictive look which I knew too well. As I looked, the eyes saw the sinking sun, and as the look of hate in them turned to triumph. But in that instant came the sweep and flash of Jonathan's great knife. I shrieked as I saw it shear through the throat, whilst at the same moment Mr. Morris's bowie knife plunged into the heart. It was like a miracle before our very eyes, and almost in the drawing of a breath, the whole body crumbled into dust and passed from our sight. I shall be glad as long as I live that even in that moment of final dissolution, there was a face, a look of peace, such as I have never imagined that I might have rested there. The castle of Dracula now stood out against the red sky, and every stone of its broken battlements was articulated against the light of the setting sun. The gypsies, taking us in some way the cause of the extraordinary disappearance of the dead man, turned without a word and rode away as if for their lives. Those who were unmounted jumped upon their leader wagon and shouted to the horsemen not to desert them. The wolves, which had withdrawn to safe distance, followed in their wake, leaving us alone. Mr. Morris, who had sunk to the ground, leaned on his elbow, holding his hand pressed to his side. The blood still gushed through his fingers. I flew to him, for the holy circle did not now keep me back. So did the two doctors. Jonathan knelt behind him, and the wounded man laid back his head on his shoulder. With a sigh, he took, with a feeble effort, my hand in that of his own, which was unstained. He must have seen the anguish of my heart in my face, for he smiled at me and said, "I am only too happy to have been any service." Oh God, he cried suddenly, struggling up to a sitting posture and pointing to me. "It was worth for this to die. Look. The sun was now down upon the mountain top, and the red gleams fell upon my face, so that it was bashed in rosy light. With one impulse, the men sank on their knees, and a deep and earnest Amen broke from all of them as their eyes followed the pointing of his finger. The dying man spoke. "Now God be thanked that all has not been in vain. See, the snow is not more stainless than her forehead. The curse has passed away, and to our bitter grief, with a smile and in silence, he died a gallant gentleman." And that, my friends, is the end of Bram Stoker's Count Dracula. I hope you've all enjoyed this story as I have. It's fun to read the original words as intended by the original author, so that we might know the true story of Dracula. This has been Indiana Holmes. Thank you all for being with me tonight, and love to you all. Good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.